Oh! Alright, I'm still kinda recovering, but this video did come from a request. Welcome to the LA build guide. How do these again? You know what? Let's start with like a showcase, right? That's what like all the professional ones do. I have the waste stones prepared. These are like about as juiced as you want a waste stone to get. These are 36% delirious. Right, 6 modded. Let's dump one of these in. This is what like a general map should look like on the builds. And if you've been playing LE or like watching any LE content for any amount of time, this is going to be a very familiar, very tried and tested build ever. You've seen this a million times. It does all the LA things you know and love. There's Omni. Gone. It's rare, he's gone. Holy performance, though. Oh wait, this is chill ground. Yeah. See all this chill ground that I can completely ignore? Alright, we have a breach. Let's do the breach. I still missed one? Oh, look at that money. Alright, that was the entire map. Pretty good. Yeah, you're fairly survivable. Sometimes you'll get knocked off your Roa, and then, like, you'll break some maps. It is what it is. That's just kind of one of the risks of, like, riding around in a Roa. But Roa is still just so much of your damage that you do almost always want to do this. So you've been wondering what the single target looks like on this. Why? I'm going to do a Zesht right now. That's not the right thing. There we go. Oh, a divine. Definitely not the League RNG in a nutshell. This is the League has been awful RNG for me, but maybe this is the game asking for forgiveness, sympathy, apologies. And we're done. Not the cleanest. Like, we definitely didn't, like, just one-shot obliterate the T4 Zesht, but that's mostly on my gearing. That's me just being really, really lazy. Oh, hey. Got tank. Nice. Nice. Cool. I'm probably going to stutter more on this video than I did on the last video, which was not even PoE2, which was LE, so if you're here and you found me randomly on the PoE2 videos, welcome! Alright. So builds. We hit Lightning Arrow, and we hit Lightning Rod, but backwards, because this is Lightning Rod, and this is Lightning Arrow. You map while you hold right click, you run around, you click your left click, which is what I have bound to, you can have bound to whatever you want, and then you rain down lightning rods, and then you click on Lightning Arrow. You know all this, you've seen all this. Very, very done to death. This is my gear right now. So, The whole reason I wanted to go for non-crits versus crits is I just was not really feeling the power of crits, even after like fully investing into it. But I did feel the loss of all of my defenses. I did not enjoy the fact I was running around at like 2,000 total health instead of the 3,000 I have here. I did not enjoy the fact that I had to drop so much of my rarity and there was so much more rarity pressure. Losing my resistances is one thing. Losing my loot is not something I'm really willing to accept. So I stuck to non-crit. And I stuck to non-crit. I did all the content I was really willing to do. There are some things that are still remaining. I still haven't, if you look at my Atlas, I still haven't done full Simulacrum. I did rituals. I didn't do the bosses because I just didn't do Arbiter. Arbiter didn't seem worth it to do. I didn't want to go around collecting citadels. That's more of a PoE state thing. This build is very capable of doing Arbiter. This build is very capable of doing everything else, crit or non-crit or otherwise. That's mostly on the strength of Deadeye more so than it is the difficulty of the bosses themselves, particularly because this league, they've also made the bosses easier. But the reason I'm making the video right now is because I'm not really planning on progressing the video build further. Okay, so let me slowly go over all of the build choices and like how I came to these conclusions. So this is currently the tree. There are some questionable things if you look at it at first, but I think for me this is what worked out to be the best. There are some optimizations I could do even here. I think the Mobalytics guide I will write out that goes along with this will have a more polished version of like the tree I would potentially be running instead of this. But this is the tree right now. You path up here. This is like the most efficient way to get up there. You go for the movement speed. This is a very efficient defensive node. And this is like the best way to path here because you do want like all the skill speed. That just means more attack speed. Pathing all the way into this because the movement speed is very nice. We just want all the movement speed yet, honestly. And the line up here is Quiver. These stack with each other, so you have 22% increased damage per node because of Inspiring Ally. I think the build overall was lacking some pen, and Shock Magnitude is very strong, so I took Shock Magnitude and pen, and turns out Shock Magnitude has continued to be very strong. And this, finally, is because projectile speed is insanely strong. What do I mean by that? So, you'll notice I have both Feathered Fletching allocated and projectile acceleration. Why? Because they stack. So, this game does not have a bow tag, so Lightning Arrow has AoE projectile lightning chaining barrageable, but not bows. This says increased reductions in projectile speed also applies to damage with bows, and this says increased reductions in projectile speed also apply to projectile damage with supported skills. They're worded slightly differently, and PoE says it is a very, very specific game with its wording, which means if I take this off, I lose 10% of my damage. It's more than 10. It's more like 20-something%. And you're like, okay, well, that's because this is giving you more prot speed. Which means this doesn't do anything, right? Like, they mean the same thing. This is also about 20% of my damage. Which means when you allocate both of these, every single node of projectile speed gives you 2x the value of what you're supposed to get. Which means Volant Quiver is our best base. You want projectile speed because 40 projectile speed means 80% increased damage. And all of these nodes are actually 16% increased damage each. And this node says it is 45% increased damage and 3% movement speed. So just this cluster alone is definitely very, very worth it. The penetration is incredibly worth it because you do need some penetration, even if you use Rockiato's Flow. I actually am not sure about the calculation, so bear that in mind. However, in PoE 1, if you invert the enemy resistances, penetration is actually more efficient, not less, because it increases the amount of damage enemies take, which is not the same as increasing the damage you deal, which effectively works out to a more damage multiplier instead of an increased damage multiplier. Quiver effect is always been very strong. They used to all be all up here, and it was a very, very strong tree. They split them up. The effect's less. It's weaker, but like it's still very strong, and we're taking if you're pathing this way anyway. And I want all of these nodes. The companion damage, as mentioned before, since you have this, you do want to take every single point of the double companion damages you can find, which means this one here, if you can take it. There's also one down here that you can take, and all of these will say 22% increased damage. Now the rest of it is the surround nodes. Why the surround nodes, and why are we down here? Is pathing down all of this worth it? Yes. So if you have not been aware of how strong Constricting Command is, Constricting Command is an insane item for this particular patch, because Surrounded is a mechanic that says you need 5 enemies to be considered being surrounded if they're within 3 meters of you. However, if you require 5 fewer enemies, that means you now need 0 enemies to be near you to be considered surrounded. So we are surrounded at all times. This has a roll range, so if you go out and buy this helmet, make sure it requires 5% or greater fewer enemies, as in like you want the number to be 5 or higher. I don't know why you'd want to go for 6. They're really expensive because they're corrupts and you can get those, but you're looking for 5. You get one of these helmets. This is your best in slot helmet roughly the entire time you're playing the game. And this also means you can benefit from all these surround nodes. This just has 20% increased attack speed. There's nothing else. You would have to take 5 to 10 other nodes to get to 20% increased attack speed. Same thing with all these 25% increased damage. And this is just generic increased damage for attacks. The only comparable ones are this, which is 22%, and it's conditional. You have stuff like this, which is increased roll range, which we're not rolling, we're using Aroa, but the increased movement speed is very, very good. Like, we want as much movement speed as possible. And also, these 3 nodes total to 150% increased damage. With this, it's 175. Sorry, I missed this one. But yes. Insanely efficient item, which makes this entire pathing worth it. This is one of the big reasons I actually want to come down here as well. Chill, if you've been playing for the game for any length of time, is one of the most annoying mechanics in the entire game, alongside temp chains. So this deals with our chill. I eventually also want to get this node, because you get 5% movement speed, which is the important part, but you also get 5% increased max life. Percent increased max life is actually kind of rare in this game, so this makes it a very valuable node. Eventually, I would also like to get this, but I might Megalomaniac this. But Crystalline Resistance, +1 to all max res is very, very strong. The more of it you have, the better it is. Max res, one of the best ways to not die. The rest of it is fairly self-explanatory generic damage nodes. 12% increased damage per affected Herald, and then this gives you 40% increased damage while affected by Herald of Thunder. We mostly scale Fizz and Lightning damage, and most of our Fizz damage becomes Lightning, so this becomes a very, very efficient node. Again, if you've been paying attention to the numbers, 40% is a big number compared to a lot of the very smaller, very bad numbers, like this one right here, which is 10% increased. Most of the generic increases will be weaker, like these are 12%. These are 12% and you'll still take them. You do want to come down here, you do want to take all of these, and up here, these are very, very efficient. Now, there is a caveat to this area specifically, in that I might consider moving away from all of these and go for a straight evasion body armor. I did craft something like this for that specific purpose, where I have it right here. You can make something like this very easily. I will cover it in the crafting section, but I make all my body armors in a very, very similar fashion. And that extends to a lot of my gear as well. I make all of my bows and quivers. Every single piece of gear you see here is self-crafted. And it's a crafting league, and I really enjoyed crafting. If you do end up going for this route yourself, I will recommend, at this point in the league at least, when it's like so late and deep into it, look across the market, look through all of the items, see if you can find something that is equivalent to these items for cheaper than like what they're worth to craft, because like crafting currency right now has become very expensive, and since these are non-crit items, the crit has like a higher premium, so these you might find for like really, really cheap in the marketplace if you actually look around and you stumble upon something. Okay, so skills. As mentioned earlier, you've seen it. Projectile acceleration. It double stacks with node on the tree. Again, I don't know if it's very efficient to go for projectile speed instead. It felt really good to me, so I've been running it. Defy, as explained, with the helmet, is the single best support gem you could possibly find. It fully eliminates your mana requirements, and your attack damage being lucky is insanely strong because we have really high lightning rolls wherever we can find it. The bigger the range, the more efficient lucky is. I guess I could go over lucky a little bit. If you don't know what lucky is, lucky rolls every time you attack. There's a dice roll on the roll range of all of your damage types, and every single hit like rolls this over and over again. So like whenever I fire 4 projectiles, there's 1 roll, but all 4 projectiles have that damage range. So lucky means that's rolled twice, and it will always take the higher value, which works out to like about 30-something%-ish increase in damage, or more damage. Again, insanely strong, one of the most efficient gems that exists currently, alongside Constricting Command. Play it while you can. I don't know if it's going to be around for too long. Stoicism. Generic damage node, very good. If I get a Rachiotus Flow, I would probably take this out because the math works out to this is the most efficient node I have out of everything here. It's like everything is like slightly better, but honestly, I don't even know if, aside from bossing specifically, that I would take Rachiotus Flow over this, because this does feel very, very good for mapping. Generic 20% damage is just very strong. Rapid attacks, you attack faster, you have no mana cost, so there's no real downside to this. You just attack, you just attack, you just attacking. Lightning Rod has the exact same thing, where I have no mana cost, so you just keep hitting, and you do a lot of damage. Lightning Rod, similar case, you just have like all the generic damage nodes that you could find. Deliberation, Defy. Deliberation, because you're like preloading the damage, the movement speed penalty doesn't matter. We're also on the back of Aroa, so this is our running speed, and then like when we're lightning rodding, we're a little slower, but you're still moving around. Execute, since we're using this against like mostly bosses at this point, the more damage multi against low life does become very efficient, and 50% more is a big number. Chart shots. I don't know if this is correct. Chances are this is probably worse than using Stoicism. I'll play around with it, but I do need 10 dex gems, which is why chart shot is here. That's also why we have all these gems up here. And LE armament is just generic damage increase. All of these other ones, I don't really use any of these skills anymore. I use them throughout leveling, most of campaigning. Escape Shot felt very, very nice to use. Voltaic Mark is insanely strong when early on you don't have enough boss damage. Later on, this doesn't really matter as much, but early on you can Voltaic Mark, and having increased magnitude of shock is insanely strong when you lack the damage. Early on, before you have a lot of gear, you Voltaic Mark, Stormcaller Arrow, you Electrocuting Arrow. This gives you 10% gain as extra lightning. This gives you a massive shock that lasts for way longer. And this increases the magnitude of the shock, so all of this amplifies your damage hugely for single target. Roll amount, because companions really die very, very easily at this point in the game, and a lot of them don't really keep up with you. I think the Ant one, I believe, is the only one that does keep up with you. Roll amount is one of the generically strongest companion supports you can use, and companion damage increases are some of the most efficient damage increase nodes that you can find on the tree right now. We have Herald of Thunder for clear. It's fairly self-explanatory, but all of this is mostly for damage nodes. This is generic damage increase because you don't really care about AoE. This is non-conditional damage increase because we're not really inflicting shock, because this can't inflict shock. So this is just 25% more damage, 30% more damage. Long shot because it's an attack skill, and most enemies you kill with this are going to be very far away from you because this chains further than like whatever you're hitting. So you're hitting off screen, and then like things off screen are chaining onto other things off screen. So this is almost always active, and you're almost always at 35% more. Support of lightning skills +1 to lightning just means more damage because there's more damage percent and efficiency. This is 179 at this point. And LE armament because, again, strong generic damage node. You pretty much always want this. I guess something I did forget to mention is reduced effective curses. Since you don't have as much pressure on your sockets to like fix all your reses, this feels way, way better to use. And all the temp change effect is at like 6%. 6% is a lot nicer than 30% where you're glacial in your movement. So this takes care of all of your curses. It also reduces the enfeeble and ally weakness to down to 6%. If you get a 3-socket one, obviously you can go for like 100% curse. You could also go for like curse reduction on the tree. You can anoint. This is the most efficient one to anoint. You can anoint this on your amulet. Obviously isolations are very expensive, but 20% increased evasion, 20% increased ES, and 25% reduced effective curses on you is insanely strong. And this will effectively make you curse immune to everything that could possibly curse you. So, but yeah, I think that about covers it for like the actual build discussion part of the build itself. Again, could still be better. There's like a lot of things we could like min-max on the character, but I don't see the reason to do it, and I just don't have the desire to do it. But yeah, that's the build in general. That's how the build works. From this point on, I will cover all of the crafting, so if you want to know about the crafting, you can keep watching. You can follow along for some of the crafting steps. Every single piece of gear you see here is self-crafted. I didn't really buy any of this. I bought the belts. I bought the belts back when I was level 60. And I've been using the belt since because I didn't really have the need or feel the need to change it. I don't know, I just didn't find anything better. But with all that being said, and since we've like heavily moved into crafting, let's go figure out how to craft all of our items. So I figured I'd like to go through these one at a time and go through these by example. So I picked up a bunch of bases. Let's start with our rings. So I'll show you how I did these rings. These rings were done with the exact same process. But what you do is you get a magic base that has really good prefix and suffix rarities on them. So I did pick up a base right here. These can range from, depending on the base and like the rolls, anywhere from like a few exalts to like maybe a divine or something, or like a few divines if you get like a perfect roll and you have like a really good base, like maybe you have a perfectly rolled amethyst ring, maybe you have like a perfectly rolled prismatic ring. Those will be a little more expensive. In general, you're spending somewhere between like a few exalts to like maybe 3 divines. You take one of these, you go into your essences, you hit whatever res that you need, like whatever res if you're feeling like you're lacking. Start with the rings first, because the rings will dictate what other reses you want to slam your other gear with. So let's say on our slams, as you'll see in a second, we want, let's say I have this ring and oh, I want lightning res. Let's do lightning res. And then here you want to prefix desecrate. So you go here, collarbones, we had a desecrate, that's prefix. And from this point, you want to homogeneous greater exalts into a perfect exalt. And when I say greater exalt, I mean the omen. One of these, use, I have one homogeneous. One of these, and then you use, oh, look at that perfect exalt I just dropped. One of these, right? But we are actually missing a very, very key component. And this is going to be the most important part. So Reaver. So you have fully Reaver catalysted. This is 4 modded. You have a homogeneous, a greater, and a catalyzing exaltation. The greater is here for efficiency. The catalyzing is you hope and you pray that you hit an attack mod. Because this part is like skewed heavily towards you, but it is also RNG. And you hit homogenizing because here, because we have this, as soon as I hit all 3 of these and slam this, I am guaranteed a decent defense roll and an attack roll. And if we hit attack roll, it'll be like very, very good. Sometimes you'll hit a damage roll because you have lightning res. Unlucky, it is what it is, but if you hit this ring, it is insane. And here we hit T3 lightning damage, and we have T1 all res, T3 lightning. Yeah. And now we take this, we take our reveal, because you obviously want it to be good. So come here, grab one of these, activate it. Do the well. You chant high damage roll. And then you click. Okay, sometimes it just doesn't work. But alright, see, there we failed. However, you can just roll this indefinitely. We can come back here, you can light annul and roll again. I'm not going to do that here, but that's the idea. You want to roll for like some kind of like decent damage roll. You have like a T3 here, you're trying to get another damage roll on this. So once you have like 2 flats and 50 rarity, you're good. That's like, I'm happy with that. Yeah, there's one for 30 and ours is way better than this. So congratulations, you've made this ring. Alright, so let's go with the amulet. Amulet craft is kind of very simple. You'll learn very quickly that a lot of these crafts are incredibly similar. But okay, here I got a +3 magic base. The prefix doesn't matter, but you do want to avoid life and you want to avoid mana. Let me properly explain crafting for amulets. Projectile +3 is completely tagless, which is very, very important because we're also going to be using homogeneous for this specific craft as well. So here, for prefixes, you can have any of these tags. You have defenses. Defenses are fine because there are no suffix defenses. So you can have rarity, you can have defenses. You just don't want life or mana. And you don't want increased spell damage because that's a caster tag. And just because this is still here, it's a really low chance. But why would you want it? You can also roll cast speed, and you don't want cast speed. The whole reason for this is we want resistances, and we want defenses. So something you could do with this is you can... You know what? First off, let's just slam this with defense, right? So you have our amulets, cold res, because why not? You just want some res, right? Hey, we mid-rolled it. Nice. And then, surprisingly, we are going to do the exact same thing. You prefix, lock it, do this. And then we don't unveil it yet, because these are the specific tags that we want. Here, the only tags we have across all of our affixes is defense and cold res, which means when we homogeneous double slam this, we're only going to hit a resistance on the bottom, and we're only going to hit defenses on top. What you can do is unveil it, block armor, and then light annul it, redesecrate, and then get whatever prefix desecration that you want. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to do this. But again, it is very possible to also hit armor, and armor is obviously not something you necessarily want on your amulet. Let's grab this again. Let's do homogeneous, and of course, since we're doing a homogeneous craft, you pretty much always want to do a double slam because these are so expensive, and these are so cheap. Grab one of these. So here. We have our +3 proj. The only tags on this, defense, cold res, greater exaltation, homogeneous, which means this will only give us a defense and a resistance. Possibly elemental, maybe chaos. But you're not going to roll strength, you're not going to roll any of the dumb stuff, and then you can unveil it for whatever else you want. Unveil armor if you want to block it. I would highly recommend you unveil armor, block it, and then light annul, recraft this to fully finish this craft. That is my recommendation. I would not recommend YOLO Bolo slamming because you can hit armor. Well, who knows? There's like 2 ES tags and like one armor roll. Surely we don't hit armor, right? We did not hit armor. We hit 40% max ES and we hit T2 fire res. That is an amazing amulet. And this is a 20 divine amulet that we just made. We still haven't unveiled. So if this unveiled spirit, for example, this would be an incredible amulet. Let's go here, make sure for these expensive crafts, you always reveal. It is always worth it to reveal. We have ES from equipped body armor, spell damage rarity. Rarity's pretty good. I would be pretty happy with rarity. But we can like reroll and try to hit spirits. Let's just slam rarity. I think rarity's fine. There you go. You can also slam this with global defense mod, and that is not something I'm planning on doing. Maybe I'll cover it in the mobile latest guide, and if I decide to cover it, I will add a little post right here at this section, going over how to craft for global defense base. Okay, so bow crafting. My current bow actually isn't even necessarily the best, so we're going to do something a little different. I think this bow has been long overdue for an upgrade. I've been using this entire time, as you saw that you're not exactly lacking damage. So this is a base I've been working on. But bows in general, I've been picking up and slamming, as I mentioned before. Pick up whatever bows you pick up, you slam them. And then a base that you hit that is potentially good, you just craft on it, and you have your bow. So you pick up bases. You hit every single base. I always carry these around. You hit it with a greater orb of transmutation and a greater orb of augmentation. If you hit something good on the prefixes, like this one has T3 fist stamp, for example, and T1 attack speed. This one has T2 lightning. You keep them. So you're looking for T2 or T1 lightning or percent increased fizz. Those are the two main things you're looking for. And then whatever you don't hit, you want to try to hit the other one with the crafts. So you grab one of these. Let's say I am a big fan of the Obliterator bows. I think they're amazing for their newly enhanced fizz damage. Like, let's look for a flat one right here. The old base was like 56 to 84. This one is 62 to 115. That is so much more damage. So you hit one of these with an essence. So let's go with attack speed. You hit it with this, and then you prefix bone. So you take one sinestral, hit a jawbone, and then you perfect exalt slam this. So again, perfect exalts, and you use a double exalt, and you slam a prefix and a suffix. The suffix obviously doesn't matter because we're going to roll over it, but the prefix does matter, and you can potentially hit a very high damage baseline, whatever. You can hit like... You're very likely to hit something, either increased elemental damage, which is very good. You can hit increased fizz, which is very, very good. That's like one of the best rolls you can get because the obliterator damage is so high. You can hit T1, any kind of elemental damage. That's like the third priority, but still very, very good. Like bow prefixes, you don't really have to like use homogeneous or anything. You just have to use a higher tier whatever currency that you have around, and you'll likely hit something usable for you. I'm not going to hit this one though, because I was working on this bow very recently, and this just needs a reroll. So we're just going to reroll on this, and we're going to see where that goes. So I'm going to leave this in this tab, and we'll figure that out later. Maybe we'll craft it for profit. Maybe I'll just burn it. I don't know. Who cares? So here I had rolled accuracy because this is very important. If you have a good bow, like this one had 179% increased physical damage. If you have a bow like this, you absolutely want to block accuracy, because one of the bad rolls you could hit is accuracy, because you as a Deadeye do not really want accuracy rolls on your bow, on your weapon. Anywhere, really. Accuracy is more for, like, huntresses. Let them figure it out. So you take one of these. I use this to block accuracy. Slammed it. Hit T5 cold damage. Obviously not the best. But this can still be very good, considering the baseline for this is already almost on par with this. Now, granted, this has percent increase greater runes. So that's playing a huge part into why the numbers look so high. But if we hit the T1 accuracy with something else, let's say a hybrid fist tag, then this bow is amazing, right? So let's go back here. I do not have a reroll, so let's go for a reveal currency. All right, we got one. So do this. Oh, I almost forgot. We annul off with a light, hit the accuracy, and this is for demonstration purposes. You generally don't want to hit this if you like slam on T5. It's not really worth it, but we'll go for it. But this is how you effectively craft your bow. You take one of these, you hit it with a jawbone. You can try to hit it with an ancient jawbone, but ancient jawbones are very expensive. I feel like the chances are already good enough to like hit with this. I generally hit pretty decently with this, but we'll see. Maybe I get cooked. I got cooked. Lightning damage. Here, the companion damage is more relevant. It's better than this. But yeah, you can also like buy bows at this point, like very cheaply. A lot of this gear, I would definitely recommend you shop around, look around, because a lot of the players are going for crit over non-crit variations that you can probably potentially very easily find something that is comparable to whatever I have crafted here. But all these bows are very, very good. All these will kill things just as efficiently, just as good. I'm going to keep using this bow because I really like this bow. Maybe I'll put this up for sale. The quiver is a lot more random because there's really no essence you could like slam on. Like with the bow, you can slam on the attack speed. With the rings and the amulet, you can slam on resistances. The quiver really doesn't have something like that. So what you do is you do the same thing. I run around, I pick up all primed, volant, and I pick up viscerals as well. This is mostly for profit. I'm not really planning on using the crit, obviously, but I pick up all of these, and then I slam them with perfect exalts. So let's get a bunch of those. Exalts? I'm at perfect regals. You do slam them with perfect exalts as well, but in this case, it's perfect regals. We do this, and you hit the quivers, you hope for the best, you try to roll something good. Here we have T2 proc speed, not exactly the greatest, don't necessarily know if I want to slam that, but these three are very slammable, right? So let's just say I'll slam this one, we hit Pierce, which is not the greatest, and we hit this one. And we also hit Pierce, which again, not the greatest. I will slam these only if there's like a T1 or double T2s that are like really, really good. In the case of the visceral quiver, since we have a crit quiver, hitting crit chance is very, very good. And here we have a T1 attack damage for fist damage. So I'm willing to take the gamble on this. If you don't roll like really, really good, I don't even bother keeping these. But I do have a quiver that I hit. So let's say this one, for example, I hit with the prefix damage, which is the best case scenario, and it hits suffix crit chance. So this quiver is ready to be fully crafted. Generally, you want flat damage, but obviously both increased damage and projectile bows are very, very good. Either of those are fine. However, the beauty of this quiver is the rest of this is completely deterministic. All right, after a very, very, very long time grinding, it wasn't that long, it was like 2 maps. We have gotten a homogeneous and a perfect exaltador because I was out of money. So we take the homogeneous, we take the exaltation, and since this only has attack and crit mods, this slam guarantees a T1, I believe? For attack speed for sure. Or T1 or T2 attack speed and crits. Slam this, crit dam bonus, and T1 attack speed. So again, insane quiver. Now we go for the final unveil. Hopefully hit something good. This is obviously an amazing quiver as it stands. If we hit T1 lightning, or we hit a high tier of projectile speed, that is amazing. If we hit a high tier of bow damage, also really good. Again, a lot of very, very good possibilities with this quiver. Always remember to slam it with the reveal. Okay, we have really bad tier lightning, so we want to reroll these. There we go. High tier damage with bow skills. There we go. So for the armor pieces, because the belt I just bought, you can buy really cheap, really good belts. Something to consider is you can go for a Chevron Satchel instead of this, and a Chevron Satchel is very, very good considering we're both ES and life. if you go for the swap, I keep mentioning it's a straight evasion, which for me is completely untested. I don't even know if it's good. It should in theory be good even if you don't go into deflection because you have so much health and you get to go for the lower really good nodes. But for the cases of this, I'm going to cover exactly what I did for these. So body armor, it's very simple and it's very similar to what I've been doing with the bow and the quiver, where I pick up every single base for either sleek jackets, the falconers, and the slip strikes. And the slip strikes is mostly an experimental thing. And again, you greater transmute, greater augmentation, until you hit either flat evasion or percent evasion. Do not hit life. Again, very similar to the jewelry crafting, you do not want to hit life and start rolling with that because this is also a homogeneous, perfect exalt craft. One thing I'll say is prior to getting this helmet, because this helmet is also kind of expensive, I was using this helmet. This is also something you can very easily craft. Maybe I'll cover it in the crafting section, but the idea is you go for, like, this one is T3. So what I did with this one, because this is honestly really bad, I wouldn't even recommend making this, but I went for a double rarity, prefix and suffix, magic base on an ancestral tiara. I slammed on the increased essence, or increased ES. I would at this point probably slam on increased lightning resistance and try to unveil with a desecration and ES, and then use a homogeneous and double slam with perfect. That way you are guaranteed a defense roll and a resist roll because your rarities are both filled. You don't want mana, you either want flat ES or you want percent ES. You don't want ES life, you don't want ES mana because that gives you a chance to go for either like a mana on your prefix or a life regen on your suffix. Like you don't want any of those mods. So make sure if you do go for that route and craft this for yourself, flat ES, percent ES for your prefix unveil. Okay, so body armor. As you've seen from the other crafts, I'm like kind of low on currency, but to go over it, you will do the same thing with your bows as your quivers. You augment, you transmute, and you try to find 2 good mods. Preferably something like this, which is deflection, evasion, or like evasion / ES and another resistance mods. But most importantly, you don't want life on either your prefix or your suffix. You slam it with whatever resistance essence that you have to get something like this. So this one rolled T2 flat, and then like it rolled T3 cold res, or T2 fire res, and then I slammed it with the T3 cold res. And then you desecrate on a prefix, and then you homogenize, you greater exalt, and you slam on a perfect exalt. You do all those, and you get something that's decent. You're guaranteed a defense mod, and you're guaranteed a high resistance mod. And this is what this is effectively, where I unveil life. You have to make sure you have to leave it unveiled, leave it veiled when you slam, because you don't want the tags to conflict in any way. This one, I didn't really mean to roll deflection. This one rolled chaos res, and then I slammed on fire res, but I slammed on with the homogeneous. Sometimes you'll either roll faster regen because you have the defense tag. Sometimes you'll roll deflection because you have the defense tag. It is what it is. Deflection is still like a solid defensive layer if you were like stacking enough health. So it's still a good body armor, but usually you'll roll a 3rd defense mod or a 3rd resistance mod, which is what happened here with the one I'm currently wearing, where we have triple resistance. Here I slammed on the chaos res with an essence. I rolled a cold res, and then towards the end I slammed on a fire res because I used a greater and not a perfect. If you want to settle, like you just want like a settle chest piece, and the settle argument applies for all of these crafts. You can just like slam on with the greater, and you don't have to slam on with the perfect. Most of my existing gear, frankly, like I went with a greater because I didn't have currency for perfect, like that early all in the league because I started a little late. But you can slam these with graders, and you'll still have a decent chance to hit something good. Perfect, it just like skews you towards having better values. And in some cases, fairly deterministic values, like with the Quiver. Okay. Gloves can get a little expensive. What I did here was like a very bootleg version of what you really should be doing. But this was a fairly simple and deterministic craft. What I did was I had attack speed, I had an attack damage. I believe this one had physical damage. I essenced on a fire res, and then I desecrated it with a prefix. I homogenized greater exalted omen, and then I used a perfect exalt. So this hit the attack because we also had an attack tag, so it hit leech fizz instead of a resistance, which is what we would have wanted. And it hit T2 lightning. And then I unveiled. All the attack rolls were kind of low, like it was low fire, low I think I only hit fire, and then like the fire roll wasn't very good. So I went with the T2 evasion and increased DS, and that's what I've been using this entire time. So, for boots, you're like, this looks a little weird. This is a case of like, do as I say and not as I do. But if I were to make these again, instead of like trying to get lucky, which is what happened here, this is what I would do. I would get the exceptional pair. I would slam on with a perfect transmute and a perfect augment. You have whatever pair. You're generally looking for defenses and resistance. You could be like defenses rarity. But those are like generally the layers you want to go for. And then you slam on some other resistance that you want or need on your pair of boots. And then you have one prefix, two suffix. And then you desecrate on a prefix. You double slam with homogeneous greater. And since you have defenses and a resist, you're guaranteed to slam high defenses and high resistance. So at this point, you'll have rarity or three resistance rolls, and you'll have two high defenses and a desecrated whatever. You can unveil that, try to hit the movement speed, but in case you don't, I would just go for whatever good mod that you could find. Maybe you find a hybrid, maybe you hit life. All of those are fine. But then, since you have full prefixes and full suffixes, Essence of Horror guarantees it will only remove a suffix. So you random roll and remove one of the resistances. Hopefully you hit a bad one, and you hit a Hysteria, and you get 30% movement speed, and hopefully you hit one of the bad rolls of your defenses. Yeah, so these boots sell somewhere between 40 to 60 divines. Again, very, 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 very good pair of boots. So it's still worth it. I thought it wouldn't be, but get an exceptional base. Do all those steps. If you need to look through them as you're doing them, I will also leave this, along with all the other crafting guides, in the Mobilytics guide. So you can take a look, and hopefully that helps. Past this point, you can go for a corrupt, and maybe you hit a third socket, and then you win. You do have a chance of, like, rolling over one of your already added affixes, and that would suck. That's, like, one of the losses. That's, like, a gamble that you can kind of go for, and if you hit, like, if you manage to hit a third socket, obviously, this is a GGs. But yeah, that's the end of it. So, let me know what you think. If you liked it, like, subscribe, or maybe don't. I don't know if I'm actually planning on making any more ARPG content. I love it, but I'm going on extended leave from ARPGs after this. How2 was fun. I had a great time. Again, I played the hell out of this game for the last 2 weeks. Game is, I think, in a great spot. I didn't play the other classes. I hear the other classes feel bad because they're not as strong. I like playing the good class. I don't really know what to tell you, dude. But no, if you enjoy it, stick around on the channel, like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.